As a kid who grew up absolutely worshiping hip hop music and the individuals who are behind my favorite songs, it broke my heart to come to the realization that this music was not only destructive, but it was actually polluting my soul. My mind, my will, my emotions were affected by the messaging, the perpetual propaganda that I was feeding myself on a day to day basis. Now, when I was a youngster, I didn't know what the hell low vibrational was. I didn't know what negative programming was, a psyop, any of these things, right? I just thought I was listening to music that was fun to listen to. I was seeing these dudes as my idols, and therefore, everything they said was gold. And then all of a sudden, I found myself at 15, 16 years old, not only using dope, but also selling it. And mind you, this is a kid who grew up in a two-parent household. Parents set the best example that they could for me. No parent is perfect, but they definitely did their best. And yet I found myself in the very opposite of what they wanted for me. And some could say, well, that just means that it don't matter if you have two parents in a household, etc. No, it does matter. Let's not ever get that twisted. That does matter. If you can build a two-parent household, please do, because this is always going to be the best option. But there was enough of the outside influence, mostly from the quote unquote rap culture, hip hop culture, which I just call what it is. It's ghetto and criminal culture. I'm not even saying that it is specific to a race. Whatever your ethnicity may be, you could find yourself falling into this very same ideology, this very same mentality, and it destroying everything around you. And that's exactly what this music did to me. And so when I see this news of, the likes of a Young Thug to a Lil Durk to a damn Lil Baby, news breaks every other week of a new rapper who is under some sort of RICO racketeering case or, some sort of unaliving case or something of that nature, right? Even the ASAP Rockies of the world, who deemed himself as that pretty mother, there's a temptation to be a gangster, to be about that life. And so these very same individuals who are creating the music are now they're now reaping the fruit that they sowed. This is exactly what they planted. And I remember when Lil Wayne was asked in an old interview, like, being a role model and what he feels about being a role model and the messaging he puts out. And he said, I'm not a role model. And, that's supposed to be the parents. And I agree. The parents are supposed to be the ones who are setting a precedent, but you are also responsible for the messaging that you have. You are now in a place of influence. And if you have even the slightest inkling of humanity, you will make sure that the message that you put out is at the very least neutral, right? Like a lot of pop music or whatever it may, you will make sure that it as least as just neutral. But when you are creating music, programming, because I don't care what anybody says, what you listen to affects your psyche. And what you repeat over and over again will sooner than later become a part of how you move through life. When I was in them streets with the street pharmaceuticals, right? I was not listening to Garfunkel. I was not listening to Mumford and Sons. Okay? What I was listening to was gangster rap. I was listening to the likes of a Nipsey Hussle when I was hustling, likes of a Rick Ross. If you hear stories about these kids who are doing these, these drive-bys, these pum-pums, they're likely listening to some Pooh Shiesty. You understand me? They're listening to some 21 Savage or something of that nature. There is a soundtrack that is underlaying every single action that takes place. And I'm not saying that, there aren't some people who just have a predisposition towards psychopathy or whatever it is. I'm not going to take away from that. But there is going to be a difference between the kid who essentially allows in a messaging of death and destruction and one who is, essentially filling their mind filled with positive, high vibrational sort of messaging. At some point, it may not be day 1 or day 21 or day 101, but at some point, it's going to overtake the psyche. I saw 3 of my best friends lose their lives to addictions. And when we started really, really getting active, when we started getting into those types of, behaviors, all we were listening to was the Wiz Khalifas of the world, right? The Lil Waynes of the world, the Futures of the world. These individuals right here were pushing messages of drug addiction, These were real life junkies, or at least junkies on the mic. And these are the messages that we perpetuated over and over and over again, reinforcing that very same identity of a dope fiend. And three of my homeboys, three of my brothers, they were my brothers. Even though I had to cut ties at around the age of 20 or so, they were the dudes I grew up with. I spent every single day with from middle school throughout high school. And even into, again, just a little past high school, right? We're going to step into adulthood together, but they were so given over that messaging had overtaken them. And they had never broken out of that cycle, out of that loop. And I understand that, again, it's not just rap music. There's also movies, television, etc., that is pushing this propaganda. But if we're to be honest with ourselves, what we carry with us is the music. It's the soundtrack. There's a reason why it's Lil Durk and not, Denzel Washington, who's been in movies where he is pewing folks. But it's a Lil Durk who has to be about that life. You reap what you sow in this life, and it will come one way or another. You will forever reap what you sow. It might not be in this lifetime, maybe, but you might wake up in the next and, oh Lord, here we are. You are now paying for the decisions that you made. There is a responsibility when you are a messenger. There's a responsibility to be honest, to not lie, to not cry wolf, and to make sure that the message that you're giving is going to be helpful to the individual who receives it. I can be petty sometimes. I can say some things, but when it's all said and done, the foundation of what I do at this point in my life is to tell the truth in order for somebody to be benefited. If I tell you a lie that just sounds good to you, that's sweet to you, that panders to you, right? That appeases your ego, I'm not doing you a justice. I'm doing the opposite. It may feel as if in the instant, the gratification that you get in the moment, the validation that you get in the moment, is, I guess, serving you. But in the long term, it's going to be destructive. If I tell you a lie over and over again, and somebody actually sent me a message on IG, every now and then I get to check out my messages, though I'm not very active on IG. But I saw a message recently, and a dude was basically saying, can you talk about how a lot of these behaviors basically we enable, right? Tacit approval is the word that's used. It's basically like if you're in a conversation with somebody and you don't agree with what they're saying, but you're not saying no and you're not refuting it, but instead you might even be kind of nodding along. You just want to go along and get along, people pleasing behaviors, codependent behaviors, right? When you do that, you're essentially allowing for the behavior to continue or the thing to perpetuate as opposed to opposing it, which is the hard thing to do. So when we continue to say, well, it's not that bad, just let the kids have fun. The only fun they're having is dysfunctional. That's the only fun. They put the fun in dysfunctional. The only fun they're having is the one that's going to lead to an early grave, or best case scenario, into a cell for long enough to realize the error of your ways, to make your way out, and to rehabilitate your mind. Outside of that, I have not seen an accurate mafia, gangster, hood movie so far, accurate, that did not have at least somebody having their life taken. Whether it was in a box or in a cell, I have not seen one, because I've not heard of one real true story of that life that doesn't end up in that. I'm not in some unique case. Oh man, you lost your boys to this. Man, this dude is still in and out of prison. At 10 years has just been in that rotating door. Man, that's crazy. No, it's not crazy. It's the exact outcome of this behavior. And this behavior is perpetuated through this music. Drill music is probably like the fullest expression and manifestation of this thing. But rap music, there's a spirit on rap music. We like to talk about how the white man had the meeting, and the meeting, created this basically relationship between the music or the propaganda as well as prison system. But I say that you have to be primed for that. Unless there is already an environment where individuals are primed to accept that messaging, then the messaging will not seep through. right? Or it might not be allowed. If it is rejected is what I mean. So as a culture, you have to have already rejected certain ideas in order for them not to come in. That's why I say the likes of a Sexy Red is because there's a market for Sexy Red. We can blame the white man, the labels, or the, the little hat people all day long until we're blue in the face. But the God honest truth is that somebody was willing to accept that messaging. Why? They were primed for it. Well, how did that happen? Well, that now comes into the household. Dysfunction within the household will likely lead to that. Or gaps and lapses, right? Or this perpetual fixation on needing to people please. That was a big one for me. Again, my parents did the best they could, but I also grew up in a very emotionally void household. My folks were just not, tapped in that way emotionally. So, especially my mom's. This ain't to air out. I love my mama, but it's just, that part of her was just non-existent. Maybe there's so much trauma that she is masking and, so much pain that she is holding back. I never really got to know her. Even as a grown man, like I'm still getting to know my mom who was there, but wasn't really there in that way, right? And so that right there led to, me kind of be like, okay, so, maybe it's best for me to hide things, to keep things internal. That's how I became, a dope addict, is because I was trying to suppress the pain. I was trying to suppress these, whatever hurt that I was going through, as opposed to confronting it and dealing with it in this way, which it's ironic because that's literally what I do for a living at this point. I literally just speak truth. I tell the truth. I tell the whole thing, whether it's confrontational, if it's something that's going to irk or whatever, if it's, if it's going to make people feel some type of way. But growing up, I was the kid who tried to evade. And so I people pleased and, I was stepping on eggshells and those type of things. And that essentially led me down where I was primed to be an individual who, was susceptible to some of these sorts of behaviors. So again, I don't lack empathy around this. I actually have so much empathy around it that I'm willing to speak directly to it because I've been through it. I believe the least empathetic thing that you can do for somebody is to continue to just lie to them and tell them, oh, it's okay, everything's okay. Like, you're not going to continue to indulge in this sort of programming and this sort of conditioning and not end up in a place where you are now acting those behaviors out. I'll be lying to you if I told you that you can saturate your mind filled with these vile, toxic ideas and it would lead to a better life. Just like if you're trying to get your money up, you work on your finances, you continue to listen to poverty mindset individuals who are so given over to blaming and complaining and a victimology, and you expect to become wealthy. That's not going to happen. You have to renew your mind. You have to change the hardwiring, the programming. That's what got me into content in the beginning, in the very first place, was to get into how do we re-engineer the mind. You have to challenge ideas before you can actually change behavior. I appreciate you for tapping into this video, and if you would like to show some love to the channel, make sure to click the link below titled Buy Me a Coffee, or you can send a Cash App, or, just keep showing up. I'll keep showing up, you keep showing up, and it'll be a beautiful thing. Till the next time, peace.
I fell in love with the sunshine. I fell in love with the light. I fell in love with the full moon. I fell in love with the night.